2 teens, 2 guns, and a plan months in the making. April 20th, 1999. It started like any other spring morning in Littleton, Colorado. Blue skies, birds chirping, students groaning about classes and finals. Parents kissed their kids goodbye. Nobody knew that by lunchtime, the name Columbine would be burned into America's memory forever. At around 7 a.m., Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold woke up and got ready. Not for school, but for something else entirely. They weren't running late or scrambling for homework. They were checking weapons, double-checking homemade bombs, and recording their last goodbyes on tape. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. For months, the 2 teens, both seniors at Columbine, had been planning an attack they hoped would shake the world. In their journals, in basement videotapes, they ranted, plotted, and practiced. This wasn't just a school shooting. They wanted a massacre. They planted bombs in the cafeteria timed to go off during lunch. If they had exploded, hundreds could have died in a matter of seconds. But they didn't. The bombs failed. And so, just before 11:20 a.m., the 2 pulled up to Columbine in separate cars, dressed in trench coats and carrying duffel bags packed with weapons. The plan had changed, but the destruction they wanted hadn't. Just outside the west entrance of the school, they opened fire. It happened so fast, students didn't know what they were hearing. Firecrackers? A prank? But it wasn't a joke. Within seconds, 2 students, Rachel Scott and Richard Castaldo, were shot while sitting on the grass. Rachel died instantly. Richard survived, paralyzed from the chest down. Inside the school, panic started to spread. Teachers scrambled to lock classroom doors. Students dove under desks, hid in closets, and whispered prayers. The fire alarm was pulled, but confusion reigned. No one really understood what was going on until it was too late. Eric and Dylan stormed through the school, targeting students in the hallways, the library, the cafeteria. They weren't rushing. They moved with chilling calm, laughing, shouting, picking who to shoot. The horror inside the library, where they spent 7 minutes killing 10 students and injuring many more, would later haunt the nation. The 911 call from inside captured it all. Gunfire, screams, silence. Students huddled under tables, hoping to disappear. Some begged for their lives. Some tried to reason with them. Others just froze, too scared to breathe. The shooters mocked them, shot through tables, tossed pipe bombs. It was chaos, and it was evil. One of the most well-known moments came in that library. The story of a girl allegedly asked if she believed in God before being shot spread like wildfire. While details of that account remain debated, the emotional impact was real. It became a symbol of faith, of tragedy, of a nation desperate to make sense of senseless violence. By noon, the shooting had mostly stopped. Eric and Dylan made their way back to the library and took their own lives at 12:08 p.m. When the SWAT teams finally entered, hours later, the halls of Columbine were eerily quiet. But the aftermath was far from over. 12 students and 1 teacher were dead. Over 20 more were injured, hundreds traumatized, and an entire country left shaken, confused, and angry. The big question was, why? Eric Harris was often described as charismatic, intelligent, but also manipulative. He had a history of violent writings and a fascination with war and domination. Dylan Klebold, quieter, more inward, seemed deeply depressed and angry at himself. Together, they formed a toxic bond, fueling each other's rage, pain, and hatred. They weren't outcasts, not in the way most media described. They had friends, they went to prom, they joked around in class, but they also felt wronged by society, by peers, by life itself. And they made a decision to lash out in the worst way possible. There were warning signs, but they were scattered. Eric had been in trouble with the law. Both had written disturbing essays. Their websites contained threats. Teachers and classmates had noticed things, but no one connected the dots. When it was over, the country began a long and painful conversation about bullying, about mental health, about guns, about violent video games and music, and about how two boys from the suburbs could plan something so monstrous without being stopped. Columbine wasn't the first school shooting in America, but it was different. It was more brutal, more public, and it left behind a blueprint that others would tragically follow in the years to come. The images of that day, students running out with hands over their heads, kids jumping from windows to escape, parents waiting outside not knowing if their child was alive, those moments became etched in history. Columbine changed how schools operate. It changed how police respond to active shooters. It changed how parents talk to their kids. But more than anything, it exposed something raw and real and terrifying about modern life. That sometimes the monsters aren't strangers. They sit next to us in math class. They ride the same school bus. They laugh with us in the lunchroom. And sometimes they don't wear masks. They wear trench coats